Hi everyone, welcome to Academic Writing Week 6, I think it is, maybe week 7 now. We are going to look at the features of academic writing. Okay. I want you guys to take a couple of minutes. What makes academic writing academic? Why is it different to a newspaper article? What are the features that make it different? Take a couple of minutes, maybe 1 minute actually. Izzy and Ross, put it in the chat if you've got anything to add. I'll start listing them. So Izzy, the question was, what are the features of academic writing? What makes it academic? So I'm going to write out some headings. Complexity is a big one. So complexity refers to the written and spoken language. Written language in academic terms has longer words. We have a varied vocab. Anything else to do with the complexity? You use more noun-based than verb-based. Anything else? The grammar is more complex. So no contractions. So Ross says punctuation. Yep. The punctuation in grammar, it's more complex, it's more refined. And I'll give you an example. Okay. So I want you guys to and this sentence will demonstrate exactly how not to write academically. So this looks like something I would write after being in my office for about 15 hours. Okay, you can control the trains this way, and if you can be quite sure that they'll be able to run more safely and more quickly than they would otherwise, no matter how bad the weather gets. That is not an academic sentence. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to condense this into something more academic. So, it's far too long, it's far too wordy. You've got contractions everywhere. Contractions being they'll instead of they will. And I want you to write this in a more grammatically succinct way. Okay, so I would do if you write a sentence and you run out of breath before you get to finish it, it's too long. It's twice as too long. It's twice as long. And you'll see difference in both the grammar and the vocabulary. So my version, the use, I'm not going to write it, so I can't bother. Is it yours? It's not that bad. The use of this method control unquestionably leads to safer and faster train running in the most adverse weather conditions. So it's succinct. I don't run out of breath before I finish it. And if you say it in like a posh English accent, it sounds better as well. So that's complexity. You're using longer words. You're not using contractions. And they are shorter. We have longer, more complex words, even though unquestionably it's not that complex. Okay. That is complexity. Now this one, the next one, is the one where most students lose their minds because they write like they speak, they write like they text, they write like they hear on TV. So we look at formality. So, informal stuff. A lot of. Sort of. Thing. So, I have a lot of stuff. Is not. And we'll look at this when we look later on at preciseness in academic writing. We do not use colloquialisms. Colloquialisms and colloquial words. So you would never write the server in academic writing. You would write the service station. Another thing that students will typically lose marks for is abbreviation. So you can't use contractions or abbreviations in academic writing. It doesn't matter. You just can't. What do? We write cannot. We write should not, and we write does not. We do not write two-word verbs. Put off. Bring up. What are words we could use in place of put off or bring up? So take 30 seconds. What would we use? Instead of put off. So I'm going to put off doing that. I'm going to, what's the word? No, I can't. Avoid. Bring up. Depending on the context, you could say lift. I'm going to bring something up in conversation, which is different. But you can't use these sort of colloquial two-word verbs because we're looking at formality. Okay. No colloquialisms, no contractions, no two-word verbs. And that is formality. Okay, another big one. Precision. You're in the chat or you're watching the recording. Go onto your paper, and I want you to write two sentences. One that is precise and one that is very imprecise. I'm going to give you 1.5 minutes to write a precise and imprecise sentence. Okay, so I'm going to write, there are a large amount of there are a large amount of viruses in circulation. So let's remember, when we write academically, it's either when we're doing an assignment, for work, if you're doing research, you may be presenting this information or someone's reading it. And this is completely, sorry, this is imprecise. No, sorry. So this is completely useless information. Whereas if I wrote so there's two things that are missing here. Large amount doesn't mean anything. Okay, but where? In Australia. Because if you're presenting, let's say I'm going over to the US to present this at a conference, and I say I'm talking about Australia, or I don't say where I'm talking about, and I just come out with this. It's imprecise because the number is vague and there's no location, or what does it mean? So preciseness can also carry forward into, and this is a problem because precision in scientific writing. So if you're undertaking research, you're writing research papers, and you just kind of giving close enough numbers, then your work won't be able to be reproduced. It will be effectively wasted. So we have to be precise, especially if you're working scientifically. So objectivity. And this is kind of objectivity or objectivity, or sort of not about you. So what does that mean? We don't use the word I. It is impersonal. Because if you're trying to tell me something, at the end of the day, I don't really care about your opinion. I just want to know what the numbers say. So we do not use I, we. Myself. The common mistake I see, in my opinion, or you can clearly see. In my opinion, you can clearly see. These are the most common mistakes that you'll see. So all well and good for me to tell you what not to do. Instead, write, instead of saying in my opinion, Clearly best option. Some would argue that clearly is not an academic term, but I'm okay with it. This is where, so instead of using any of these, clearly the best option. This is where, what else have we got? There are several possibilities. So what I want you guys to do now is write any random sentence with one of these. Then I want you to write a sentence using one of these. So it's both sentences saying effectively the same thing. And you have 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yeah. Okay. So I won't stand here any longer. I'll just be here forever. But try to practice writing 2 sentences saying exactly the same thing, one from each side, and try to only use these. Okay. So explicitness. Anyone have any ideas what explicitness is referring to? No? Okay. Basically, if you've got something to say, say it. Don't be wishy-washy. Don't be wishy-washy. So if you're serving one line of this is what the data says, don't swing back and forth. When you're looking at sentences, if one sentence, you finish this sentence here, and this sentence here is providing more evidence for this one, start the sentence with an addition. Or on top of, or some way that, so that when I'm reading it, I know explicitly that this bit of information is linked to this bit. Same thing with examples. So if you give an example, for example, be explicit in what you mean. Okay. Explicit is a bit of a weird one. If you're going to say something, say it. So if you're going to give more information, in addition, if you're going to give an example to prove your point, make sure I know it's an example. Another big one, I guess they're all big, because if you don't do them, then it's not academic writing. Accuracy. And this is using the right words. And here is what you should never, ever, ever do. Go through your assignment with the word thesaurus and just start changing words to bigger ones. Because if you don't know what it means, you shouldn't be putting it in your assignment. So use the right words. Don't get phonetics, that is an example for doing English, and grammar mixed up, because they are not the same thing. You're not having an argument with someone on Facebook here where everybody can get confused and use the wrong words. This is academic writing we're talking about. And use the correct grammar. Again, you're not on Facebook, you're not texting your friends. Use the correct words, the correct grammar, the correct spelling, and make sure that your work is accurate. That's what that is. Okay. Izzy, I think you said references in the very beginning. Responsibility. What is this? Make sure you understand what you're writing about. It is really obvious. When people go on the internet, they find the most complicated source they can, and they don't actually understand. It actually says something completely different to the argument they're making. A lot of the time, it actually goes against the argument that they're making. So we do this by paraphrasing. We do this by summarizing, referencing. Why in academic writing is it, 30 seconds to have a think. Why in academic writing is it so important that we reference? I'm going to write a big word from the form. So, justification. 20 seconds to think about why referencing is so important. So this works. If you're going to argue a point, you have to justify it. If you're going to say COVID is a hoax, 5G causes COVID, then you need to be able to justify it. And this allows for intelligent discussion, because instead of just making things up and pulling them out of our head, we have to be able to justify the things that we say. If you go onto Facebook, nobody feels the need to justify what they say. If you were to go to a conference, present a paper saying, I don't know, you were going to change the world with wind power, you would have to justify that to a room full of scientists. And unless you have a good source of information and you understand that source and you can cite it, then you end up looking like a fool. So we must reference because it stops us from looking silly. It justifies our argument. You have to understand the information that you read. If you don't understand the source, what you can do is actually go against your argument, which is not really what you want. And it also allows us to acknowledge the original author of the information that we were using. Unless you are a subject matter expert, SME, then you must use references. All right, a couple more. Okay. I'm gonna go out and live and say the most important. And again, in 1 minute to think. Okay, why is organization in academic writing so important? Okay. Why is organization important? Okay, let's say we're writing a report. And that's how we start. And I mean, yes, I'm being ridiculous here, but let's prove a point, yes. So it's not only the entire thing, but you have to also arrange your arguments logically. All of your arguments should flow in a logical pattern from top to bottom. Your introduction should obviously come first. And people make the mistake of writing their introduction first. Bad idea. Conclusion and introduction are written last, because your introduction should introduce everything that's in your body paragraphs, and your conclusion and introduction should introduce no information that isn't already in the text. And that is a big problem. If I read the introduction, it should tell me exactly what's ahead. When I read a conclusion, it shouldn't have any other information. It should be a summary of the information that's required. That's in the text. It's especially important in essays, because the paragraphs, each paragraph should lead into the next one. There should be linking. There should be a nice, easy flow using these linking sentences that they teach you about. And each, it's important to understand that each sort of type of academic writing, essays, research reports, reflective writing, literature reviews, they all have a different structure. And it's important to understand and kind of get good at writing in different ways. That's everything for today. Got to go a bit quicker than I thought. I will see you guys next week. Have a fantastic week.